I mean, one of the great things about my former job was that they kept sending me to these leadership conferences, particularly women leadership conferences. So I got to learn a lot about women in the workplace. And that was one of them, that women generally have intuitive ideas, um, forward thinking ideas, and then express those ideas, but aren't maybe not in positions where they're in front of people who might champion them. And instead, a lot of the ideas that women share in the workplace are then, and a lot of the insightful, intuitive female intellect is then harvested by the men in the organization and passed off as their own. So then the men get all the praise
Yeah.
and promotions, and the women are left without a champion, without an advocate, still in the positions that we typically see women in the workplace. Like, the workplace generally in corporate America is still kind of 1950s style, where women are there to accommodate and do
Yeah.
administrative tasks.
What me visualizing things, all I'm all I'm hearing is the woman is the one is she's intuitive. We are the portal, right? The only way that another human exists is through this portal. And intuition also comes through a portal, right? Men have their own type of a portal, but for us, it's a lot more exercised. And when a woman gets an intuitive hit and then she gives birth to this idea, then a man takes this idea, this child, and claims it as their own and then gets praised for it. And and then the woman is left behind on the side. And it has come. So what I was saying before we started recording, is that 80% of the network marketing industry is owned by women. This is where women decided that I'm not going to be giving you the ideas anymore. I'm just going to be taking them myself, because you are not fully understanding it. Because we intuitives, we know, but it takes a while for some people to digest that idea and to fully understand. In other words, some people need to see the proof before taking action.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this is not against all men, because there are, like, a lot of inventions have been created by men as well. But at the same time, we also don't fully know if maybe a woman has given that idea to a man at some
Mm-hmm.
point, right? Um, but anyways, what I'm saying is that we women took our intuition to another whole level, where it's like, okay, fine, you guys want to dominate this world, we will create our own.
Yeah.
And the network marketing industry, which is it's a really big umbrella, is dominated by women.
Mm-hmm.
Last I heard was 80%, and that was a year ago. I would not be surprised if that has expanded now, especially during COVID, because we women are caregivers. And as caregivers, we want to help and help and help and give and give and give. And the only way that we're able to do that right now is virtually, which is where network marketing exists nowadays. So that's what we have been doing. We have been connecting and giving and expanding each other's minds. Whereas the men, because they are providers, they have been working harder in figuring out how to bring money in the ways that they are familiar with. Women,
Right.
and again, I don't know the statistics and I don't know the validity of my thoughts right now, but I feel like women are more entrepreneurial than men are. Because entrepreneurial, they're basically risk takers and fearless risk takers. Um, but for some reason, I sense that women are the ones that are more entrepreneurial than men. And if you're thinking of the network marketing numbers, it would make sense.
Mm-hmm. And it also makes sense in terms of what the collective needs. Like right now, the collective needs as many entrepreneurs as possible and as many individuals as possible, uncovering, like digging deep into the soul and uncovering soul mission based work and aligning our careers with the whispers of the soul. And as you're speaking about intuition, what was coming to mind is that intuition is directly related to perceiving the greater good and what's best for the greater good. And from that place of intuition, we don't need proof that what we're doing will result in the benefit for all. We trust. And so it's almost as though women have these intuitive hits, and not just women, sensitive people, plenty of empathic people, plenty of people with really strong intuition are also men. And because though there's that sensitivity, there's when it comes time to the idea or the vision coming to life, being birthed into reality, depending on who we're surrounded by, it could be harvested by someone whose focus is on their personal needs or the needs of their own family. Like some people see family as just their nuclear family, whereas so many intuitives and women see the whole global family, and people with a lot of empathy feel for all who are in the struggle. And there's billions of other people out there, and we hold them all in our hearts. So what our ideas and innovations are really more based in the benefit for all, without thinking, oh, it's just for my family. And it's very common to think that way, and there's no judgment there to think I need to do everything I can for my family. That's where that provider instinct is really strong and necessary, because we do need to take care of our families first and foremost.
Yeah.
But yeah, there does seem to be something that shifts when the idea then is through that portal or that lens of someone coming from a more like, oh, I want to win above all type of mindset.
Yeah.
And from there, you do want proof. You do want proof before you embark on that journey.
Yeah. And sometimes that proof can feel like this phrase that comes to mind. I don't know exactly how it goes. It's like when you put the carriage in front of a horse. Sometimes it feels like that proof can be that obstacle that you're putting a carriage in front of a horse and you're trying to push the horse through this carriage, or basically trying to drive it backwards. And sometimes that's how the proof might get in the way, because the proof actually always comes after action is taken. But if we sit and wait for proof, then we're really just going against ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it makes sense. It makes perfect sense in my head, but putting it into human words, as if I'm not human, because these are just feelings and emotions that I'm feeling, that I'm trying to put words to, and this is the best that I can translate right now.
Yeah. I mean, the image you were describing, it's like getting in our own way, and needing that proof is just us getting in our way.
Which is the ego, isn't it? For the most part, needing that proof, because our true self does not need the proof. We just intuitively know that whatever it is that I'm doing is for the greater good of all involved, right? At least in the long run. Because sometimes it might not be in the beginning, because like perfect example, network marketing. When people get involved in network marketing, everyone around them says, oh my God, you're crazy. What are you doing? This does not work. This does not work. And because that person that got started, they knew intuitively that it was going to work. But in the meantime, all these other people are seemingly suffering by expressing their feelings, thoughts, and emotions, which does affect this individual. So that individual might also find themselves suffering and feeling stuck and unable to take action due to other people's fears, worries, concerns. But they keep going because they still listen to their intuition and not the ego of other people, which speaks to their ego, and that's what really slows down the process. But they keep going, keep going, keep going, and eventually they see proof and they say, see, I told you it was going to happen. You didn't believe me.
Mhm. Yeah, it's such a delicate process too. Like to be the one who has that intuitive guidance and knows the difference between intuition and the mind. And because the mind will play all sorts of tricks on us, trying to either justify staying somewhere comfortable, staying in the known world, because intuition is all about the unknown, taking the leap into the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. That's exactly why it's the intuitives who are co-creating the new world, new earth. We don't know. We have these harmonics, visions of harmonics and peace and harmony, everyone working together, unity. We don't know for sure that it's going to happen, but we believe in it. And those who are taking the leap have this mindset of, okay, so let's say it doesn't work out. At least I tried. At least I tried something different from the status quo, which is undeniably what this world needs, is as many of us as possible challenging the status quo in our actions. And it's a mysterious process. And humans, I think one of the biggest complications is, well, the two biggest complications are time and money, and the importance we place on them. And soulpreneurs, some can feel rushed by the people around us to prove that there was a method to our madness, and that there was
Yeah.
a reason for it. And it could take, it takes years for entrepreneurial ventures to come into fruition. Apple wasn't Apple immediately. um, that's how we have to hold we are called on now to hold our intuitively led projects in that high of esteem of, maybe we are the next innovation that's going to help so many and bring people together. And time at when the intention is pure and it's rooted in delivering something. We don't have to know what immediately, but delivering something to the world, offering something of our soul to the world that is going to be helpful and make the world a better place. If it's coming from the soul, it's going to make the world a better place. And it takes time. We don't need proof that it's gonna unfold into something fruitful. It will.
Mm-hmm.
And we deserve all the time in the world to feel supported and celebrate each step and nurture our wounds and our setbacks. And the encouragement, we deserve the encouragement to keep going. And I think the reason why time seems so confrontational and pushes that desire to prove is because of money. And our loved ones worry about us. They want to make sure that we're going to have a place to live, have food. We worry about ourselves. We want to make sure we're going to have food and safety and shelter. And that puts a lot of pressure on delivering that proof. Having, when I was working in commercial real estate, part of my job was to come up with values, and that included like kind of future values. It was called the net present value, but the calculation included future projections. And I enjoyed that part of the job because it was something that was, basing the present value on historical information and projected future information. And that's that seems to be the way that our culture feels comfortable with any journey. We want that proof. But that's nothing new is born from that kind of process. There's no way to historically track a creative process in any way that'll satisfy others who haven't yet gone inward and felt it themselves. We can't quantify it the way we can quantify market trends, their own internal trends. And so it's really, it's really a hero's journey to begin that kind of pursuit. And it might be lonely.
For the most part, it is when a person starts in that journey. I know I was that person. When I started, I had some people around me, but they weren't dedicated to my journey. Nobody really is dedicated to our journey. We're the only ones that get to decide if that is what we want to do. If we decide to pursue this journey, whatever journey one is thinking of pursuing, it's yours, yours alone. And you're the one that decides if that's what you want. And if you decided that's what you wanted. Now, the word decision, it actually means like to cut from, right? Right, to cut away from all the other possibilities. So that's what the word decision means, right? You cut away from all the other possibilities, so to speak, or opportunities in this case. And you decide by cutting everything else away that this is what you want. And once you decide, nobody else can decide that for you, then you keep going and going and going and going until you get there. And then when you get there, guess what? You're going to keep going and going because that there place continues to move, right? It's always like a few steps ahead. So I remember when I started this journey, I'm like, I'm going to get there. And when I get there, I'm going to feel settled and I'm going to feel whole and it's going to be perfect. It's going to be awesome. And nothing else would need to get done because I'm there. But that's the thing. That's not the way that I really truly want to live, because that just means that when I get there and whatever that there is, that I'm sitting down and doing absolutely nothing. And that's not really life. That's wasting away. So that's not what I wanted. So I decided to become really clear on what it is that I wanted. And that was to live in a certain lifestyle, a certain way. And what am I going to be doing every day? How am I going to be doing it? How am I going to be feeling? Because everything comes back to how am I feeling? So now, how do I get there? Based on what it is that I want. Does that mean that I need to either mute some voices of other people in my life? Because especially when starting this journey, everybody else's voices are so loud and they have all sorts of opinions where they're not even allowing me to form my own, nor are they even open to hearing my own opinions because the minds are closed. So I needed to decide that this is not something that I wanted on my journey. So because I don't want it, I'm not going to let it in. And I'm not going to let out whatever it is that I want to say because they're simply not ready to hear. When they're ready to hear, for the most part, they need to see some kind of evidence, proof that it works. When they're ready to hear, they will speak up and they will let it known. So then I can say a little bit, not all at once, because then it will be way too much. It's like a water hose of information because I've been collecting it all and I'm ready to tell you. But no, tame it down. Mention just one important key point. Keep them hungry. Let them keep coming to you by giving them a little bit of like little crumbs of information so that way they can slowly start to piece the puzzle together of where you are at right now on your journey. And only then once they start seeing things, then they'll ask you. And once they start hearing things, then they'll start to slowly believe in whatever it is that you are doing. But remember, you're not doing it for them, you're doing it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly,
because if you're doing it for them, you would be giving them all of their information and overfeeding them with everything. And this is where people also, they need to figure things out for themselves, right? We can try to, the way I started thinking of it is I don't want to waste my breath on people that won't fully understand it because they are not me. So I'm not going to explain everything because it is also draining. So if they have a question, I will answer that question. No more, no less. It's kind of like in court, I guess, no way. Not that I've been to one, but I've seen shows where when the judge asks you something, give simple answers straight to the point without giving too much information, because then it also can come across as, what are you trying to hide?
Mhm.
Right? Like kids, you ask a kid a question, where did you put this? And they tell you a whole entire story. It's like, oh my God, what did you do? They try to cover up the crime before they even told you about the crime. So it's kind of like the same concept that can be applied to this. And it does take time, like you said, Rachel, to get there, right? Apple did not become Apple overnight. Internet did not become internet overnight. Like internet has been around since I think 1980.
Sounds about right.
Right? And it was not what it is now. And it started with an intuitive hit, started with a vision. Somebody took the steps. I don't know if that person is still around to witness their own creation, but it has been passed down the generations of people that were part of that family that now get to reap the benefits of that. So that's the other side of whatever it is that we are potentially creating here, not just for ourselves, but for our offsprings, right? For our extended family, whether it's family here or family out there, right? And it takes time because it does really come back to this one fact that if you, I, or whoever woke up tomorrow and our whole entire vision of what we wanted was right there in front of us and we woke up to it, we would not be prepared to deal with it and handle it, because in order for us to be able to deal with it and handle it, we need to go through the journey to learn more of who we are and how we want this whole vision to work and be fully prepared. So the preparation part would be missing. So we would wake up in somebody else's life. It would not be our life, even though we're the ones that wanted it. And hence, we can end up losing our minds because we are fully unprepared and all sorts of I'm not good enough messages would flood our whole entire system.
Mhm.
And the system can completely shut down. And that, to me, that image is what helped me to really see, ooh, okay. So there is a lot of beauty in the journey itself, because if I woke up to this beautiful vision that I want, it would not feel beautiful. I would not love it. I would not enjoy it because I would fear it. I would fear because I would feel like it's going to be the death of me because I'm completely unprepared. I don't know what to do with it. And of course, most will rise to the occasion, but it still would not be the same as getting there, as walking to the top of that hill, right? Um, so yeah, I feel like there was there was a lot in there, kind of like all over the place, but that's kind of like how this operates.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And that's um what I'm here for, because I would love to go back and touch upon the so many points that you were making. But one thing that came to mind is, as you were talking about being unprepared, like if you woke up tomorrow and everything was here, everything we've been calling in, something that came to mind was hearing one of my first self development teachers, Gabby Bernstein. I was listening to her talk about the internet trolls and the criticism attacks. And she's like, oh, I don't even deal with those anymore. My husband reads them, and sometimes he asks if I want to hear them, but no, there's no point. And so, something that we deal with, if as we grow as soulpreneurs, we're always going to have, there's always going to be trolls, there's always going to be people who are confronted, or egos, not necessarily the soul inside those humans, but the egos that are confronted by what we're doing. And early on in our careers and our journeys, we learn how to navigate those. And now if all of a sudden we woke up and we had, you know, a million Instagram followers and a huge newsletter following, there would be an overwhelming amount of that troll atmosphere, and it would probably be terrifying. So that's anytime I've ever had some kind of troll or someone in my messages telling me negative things about what I'm doing, I'll have that mindset of, oh, this is my training. And it really helps to fall in love with the journey, because if I don't have the willpower to keep going after that, if something like a troll in my DMs causes me to shut down, then I would never be ready for the vision that I'm looking at. And then something, as you were talking about people who there might be a window of curiosity there, and we want to start explaining and sharing. I was picturing an ocean pouring into a shot glass,
Yeah.
like going everywhere, and the shot glass can only contain so much, but the rest of our ocean has now gone everywhere. And so that's, you know, people can only hold and retain and understand what they have the capacity for, what they have the bandwidth for.
Yeah.
So, and that's really a challenge to navigate, because intuitives, we spend a lot of time in our envisioning space. And then when it does start coming out through our throat chakras, you know, it's there in our third eyes, and then it wants to come out. If we keep it locked in our third eyes alone, which the ego wants to do because it's safe up there. So the ego wants to say, no, don't share with anybody, persecution, ridicule, we don't want that. But if it stays locked in there, it doesn't serve the greater good, and the soul knows that. So the soul starts experimenting with expressing, and since it's been up there for so long, we could get excited when there's an opportunity to share. We get excited and we think someone's ready, and so yeah, just being aware that could just be a shot glass, is not necessarily a huge open, you know, cavern for us to fill. It might just be a small vessel.
Yeah, I like that analogy, the shot glass, because that's exactly how it goes. Because if we think about our own journey, we also don't learn all of it at once. We learn in the size of a shot glass. We're learning a little bit at a time. So how fair is that of us to expect this person that is finally ready to hear our journey to unload our entire months or years of journey all at once, when we have been learning it as a shot glass serving? So it only makes sense to help them understand in a shot glass serving as well, based on your intuition, what your intuition is telling you that they are ready to hear right now in this moment, no more, no less.
Mm-hmm. So important to check in with our higher selves before sharing, and making sure that our intuition is clear on how much they can retain. It reminds me of this moment. So here's the medicine. If for anyone who's ever rejected, when expressing, or feels rejected, perceives the other person to be rejecting them, I'll share a quick story. So when I was uncovering all these ancestral patterns, you know, I was piecing everything together, and I was like, oh, my brother treated me this way, and my dad treated his sister this way, and and I was just making all these connections through my ancestral line, and I thought it was so exciting. Like, I was amped. I was like, this all makes sense now. Oh, I'm gonna cure the family. And I thought it was this amazing medicine, and I was gonna go. My mom was in the kitchen cooking, and I was like, Mom, and I went to go share with her. And I had barely scratched the surface. I was maybe speaking for like 3 minutes. I was like, Mom, these are my patterns with Andrew, and these are Dad's patterns with Jenny, and these are your patterns with, and just like, so it was absolute passion while I was speaking. I was in my zone, speaking, you know, pattern recognition. That's my passion. And then my mom held her hands up like this, and she goes, can you just stop? I just need you to stop. And at first, I felt that old familiar gremlin, the trigger of nobody wants to hear me. I scare people. I'm dangerous. And so for a split second, I felt that. And then I remembered, oh, this is just a trigger. And how can I turn this into medicine? So I excused myself for a moment, sat on the couch in the other room, and I asked myself, okay, I said to myself, I've barely scratched the surface, and it was unbearable for her. And then the medicine just came to me, and it was, how deep do I go? And I was just in love with that thought, like, how deep do I go? And so this initially perceived rejection of me became my own internal celebration of myself, because that's something for me, considering how deep we could possibly go. That's incredible, and that's that's what gets me high. And so just wanted to offer that medicine, that question, how deep do I go? And the wonder and awe that it could ignite from within, that's always available. If anybody is wants to put a dam up when we're pouring our excitement, it's not a reflection, not a true reflection. It's just they're saying, it's their way of setting a boundary, saying, I've reached my limit of information. This is a lot. And it's an opportunity for us to celebrate ourselves and our journeys for having uncovered so much.
Yeah. And what we try to do in the time of when we're excited and we're sharing that with someone, we're actually not sharing the story and not the journey. We're sharing the excitement. We want, because our own excitement is not enough. We want to involve other people. Let's join in, and all of us collectively can feel excited. And it does hurt when the other person seemingly rejects the excitement, but that's because it's not theirs. They don't fully understand it. They have their own story, they have their own journey. And by us pushing our own thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions on this person can also feel like a rejection, because we're trying to share ourselves, but this person is not understanding it because they're not us.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for them to understand us, they need to go through that same journey. And even then, it would be a different journey.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are it won't come back to the same conclusion as what we did. It would be a whole entire different experience, which can also be shared. And many of us are also more than able and more than capable of feeling, hearing, feeling, understanding somebody else's journey. But the key point to that is not attaching yourself to the story and hearing the story from that person's point of view.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It makes sense to me. It's like listening without making assumptions, without creating stories, and without thinking.
Yeah.
Like listening without thinking. It's like actually listening to the person and hearing the person in the story and not yourself in that story.
Exactly. Seeing the other person as their own being, their own soul with their own soul's agenda and their own experiences from the day they were born until the day they appear in front of us speaking and sharing. They've had their own tapestry that has created their experience of life. And if we truly want to get to know each other, then the way we listen is the key. It's the magical portal to really getting to know another human being, listening with our full presence and our full awareness. And something that has really helped me in listening to others is I incorporate a lot of nature into my meditations. So when I think loving awareness, for example. One of my favorite masters is Ram Dass, and he's taught me so much about loving awareness. And so when I listen to others, I aspire to embody that. I aspire to be just a loving witness for them. And something that I've thought about often is the sky, just witnessing Earth with love, looking down at Earth. I'll sometimes look up at the sky and the sun, looking down at Mama Earth, being like, look at Mama Earth go. She's just growing. Look at her doing her thing. Detached from her journey, offering light. But for the most part, just completely is detached involvement and support. And so sometimes I'll think about that. I'll think of, I'm going to be the loving sky, the blue sky above the clouds for this person. And I also think about Mother Earth as the loving mother, the creator, and the safe space. And so I'll think about other humans and other creatures as, Mother Earth's children. And so I want to see them through that lens. Like, how does Mother Earth see everybody? She sees us all as her children. So then I'll listen to someone through that lens of, this is another earthling, and I want them to be the best they can be, and all they really need from me is just that loving awareness.
Yeah. The way I would connect your words right now to the thoughts that have been going through my mind is that I was thinking of it in form of like a question. People that are living with no technology in their life, do they know what anxiety is? And the instant answer that I got was no. That they would feel connected. And I'm thinking in terms of like tribes. There's still people that live in tribes off the land, right? The anxiety that they might feel and experience is nothing like the ones that we do here on this suburban area, living on the internet and social medias and all this stuff. They don't have that. They just have each other. They have the ground, they have the plants, they have the trees, they have the sky, they have everything. And they are connected to one another, and they feel and sense and understand things in a way that we are all disconnected. That's what it really comes back to, that those that spend a lot more time in nature, they feel a lot more grounded and connected. Those that living entirely in nature without this internet that connects us, yet it disconnects us more than it actually connects us, depending on the person that is perceiving it, however they perceive it. I see it more as connecting because I have learned the places that create a disconnected feeling for me. So I avoid those, and I don't go there unless I have to, because once I feel disconnected, it can take some time for me to get back to myself, and I don't particularly enjoy that. This is where the suffering does not really feel like it's an option. It feels like it's inevitable. But those that live off the grid and they don't have the internet, they feel grounded and connected to one and all. And so that's where my mind went. And then I saw myself floating in the space among the stars. I'm like, ooh, there's a lot of Earths around. We're not the only ones. There's like so many. And I wonder if beings on this planet are waking up like we are, and beings on that planet are waking up like we are. Do they know of us? It's like a whole bunch of who planets floating around like a speck of dust.
Mhm.
Yeah, kind of like quite literally, like all over the place, everywhere. All from what you have just said.
Wow. And I would love to also respond to that with a question. So, because the main theme is connectivity, connected. And you made such a great point that the internet could facilitate connection, or it could facilitate distraction and escapism, which is kind of the antagonist to connection.
Mhm.
And so, something that I love that you included is your own journey with the internet. And so, it's important to note that the internet is not good or bad, it's here. It's just here.
Yeah.
We get to determine what kind of energy goes into it and therefore which kind of energy comes out of it. So going back to the question I have, going back to connection, what does connection mean to you?
To me, connection feels like love. Like that's the only way I can explain it, and that's the only word that comes to mind is that when I don't feel love towards the thing that's in front of me, towards I don't want to say the person that's in front of me because it's not the person, it's how the person makes me feel about myself. So it has nothing to do with the person, it's how I see myself through that person's eyes. So, in other words, how I feel, right? If I don't feel love towards myself, then it disconnects me. When I don't feel love towards the other person, which is, again, myself, disconnects me about the thing. So, for example, if I'm feeling like I don't want to go on the internet, like social media, because there is that bit of because intuitively I know that if I go right now, I'm not fully ready to embrace what's on the other side because that might cause me to feel some kind of discomfort, dis-ease, pain, and suffering that, like I said, would more often than not feels like not, it's not a choice, it's not an option. It's just I go on there and it just hurts. And there's many different reasons as to why, but it really does come back to, for the most part, that comparison, right? Comparing myself to something or someone or someone's journey, which again, simple could not be compared, but that's still like, it's not besides the point, but it is the point that in order for me to fully be able to it goes back to the whole thing when I wake up in the morning and I have this whole entire life that I've dreamt of in front of me, and I have not gone through this learning experience of how do I detach myself from other people's journey and see their journey as their own and be completely and utterly inspired by everything and all they do and feel love and joy for them, that in order for that to happen, I need to go through these tiny little painful experiences so that way one day I will wake up and I will be that person that I want to be. And for the most days, I am that person. But there are days when I am not. That's because I am in a certain state of mind, certain time of being that I am more fragile and open. And I understand those times because something has transpired. I call it the healing. So when I am more open and receptive to everything, that this is my time to really heal and not allow too much to come in because it can prolong that healing process. Because up until this point, I've already gone through something, and that's why this vessel is open to receiving and releasing. It becomes kind of like an open flow type of thing that I don't want to add any more to it. So I set the boundary for myself that when I feel a certain way and I know what that is now, It's taken me a while to get here, but I did. When I feel a certain way, I remind myself of the boundary that this is my time now, that I need to focus on myself, and I need to, not I need to, I don't like that word, but this is where it perfectly suiting, that this is where I need that, I want that, and I choose that for myself. That today I come first, and it's always like that. I always come first, but today I am the priority, and everybody else can wait until the day after or the day after when I am actually ready.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Something that a phrase that we've been using a lot within our community, our healing community, is this sword of discernment. And that's what I was picturing, you holding your sword of discernment, choosing, when is appropriate to show up. Because when we show up, we like to be at our optimal operating capacity so that we could show up and share our overflow, our abundance of energy. And then to be able to discern between when to show up and when to rest, when to go inward, and as you said, heal when it's time for us to heal our minds, heal our own feedback loops. um, it requires a great deal of discernment.
Yeah.
And also that brings to mind knowing that we are enough. Even if we need to take a step back and not show up, that's okay. We are enough. We are enough at that point too. We
Yeah.
are we're always enough. And so being able to discern between when to step back, when to show up, and knowing that stepping back is actually in service to those moments when we are ready to show up.
Yeah. And then for also for ourselves. And the other thing that also came to mind is that some people might not understand this process. And some people, so a perfect example is messages, right? Somebody messages me and they expect an instant response because that's how they do things. Whereas this is not how I do things. And I respond when I'm ready to respond, because if I respond when I'm not ready to respond, that energy transfers, and that message, even if it's meant well, it's not going to translate like it is meant well. So I respond when I am fully ready to respond. And if the other person does not understand that, then I'm not for them and they're not for me. I have people in my life that fully understand that, and they do the same thing, right? You and I are a perfect example. We send messages back and forth whenever, and I don't have an expectation of you responding right away or you responding even the same week, because sometimes I know I can send long ass messages because they're very, very passionate. And I understand that that takes time to process, and that you need to be in a certain state of mind to be able to receive it and then interpret it and then respond to me. The same thing I have with all of my other people that I communicate that, and they know that I'm not going to respond to you right away, but I respond when I'm ready, and they get that. And those people that don't get it, they're not in my life anymore, because I'm not here to explain it to them if they are refusing to hear and understand it.
It is such a relief hearing a friend express that. That is making me cry, because being sensitive, um, I think empaths and other highly sensitive people put a lot of responsibility on ourselves to manage other people's interpretations. And when we do respond and we do take in information from one another, it's at levels that are so deep. So, for example, if I'm listening to a message from you and I notice that at any point my mind has wandered because I'm walking around looking at stuff, then I don't know when my mind started wandering. I'll start at the beginning again and listen again. Who knows how many times it takes me?
Yeah.
We all have different attention deficit challenges that we're navigating, along with the complex technology that we're is fairly new for human species. And it's just so it's such a relief because now instead of focusing on what I don't want, which is these misinterpretations when I take my gaps in communication. Like we are entitled to take gaps in communication because it can be so much. And when we respond, we are responding from the depths. Like we go in, and I want people to know exactly how I'm feeling. Um, so now I have this relationship with you as the what I can focus on what I want more of. Like hearing you say that, hearing you say, you know that I'm taking my time so that I can respond at my full awareness and with my full presence and listen with my full presence. Those are the kinds of relationships that I now at this point in my life choose to attract and create because it takes up so much mental space to be worrying, oh, it's been 2 days since I responded. What is she thinking? Is she thinking that I'm mad? And it's really not our responsibility. And it's also their journey. There's so much value in the journey on the other end of asking, why am I interpreting this gap in communication with negativity? Why am I filling in the gap with negativity? Why am I not filling it in with, oh, Rachel loves me and she is taking her time because she is going so deeply inward so that she can access the exact wisdom from whatever source she draws from so that she can deliver it to me how it's meant to be delivered and received, because that's what we're doing, we intuitives and coaches. um, so thank you for bringing that up. I think that is one of the most important things to consider in any relationship is how are we filling in these gaps in communication, and how are we making the other people responsible for our own interpretations.
Yeah. And then in that as well, there is pain and suffering that can happen as well, which we as sensitives, we don't want that on anyone. But at the same time, it does come back to boundaries. If I set a boundary for myself that I am going to respond to people when I am ready to respond, which means that when I'm ready to respond, I will be fully present and I hear what you have to say. And this whole entire time is dedicated only to you. You have my full undivided attention. I sit down and I listen and then I respond because then I'm ready to respond. Otherwise, the response is more often than not a reaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And most reactions, we know that they have negative effects. So I choose to respond and not to react. And in order for me to respond, sometimes I gotta sit on that. Even sometimes if I already heard the message, I might have to go back and listen to it again so I can respond. And it also comes back to our flow, right? Our intuitive flow and the flow of creation, that if we are forced to respond to something now, it will lack creativity. And that is what, for me, makes me feel bad about myself because I feel like I did not give it my all. I only gave half of what I could. And I don't like to feel bad about myself. So I listen to my intuition when my intuition tells me. And the way sometimes my intuition works is that when I'm ready to respond, there's absolutely no thought process that goes in. It's more into action. And I have my phone in front of me and I have the message open and it's like, how did I get here? That means, oh, I'm ready to respond, right? And I start responding. The same thing with some videos I have done where I've been wanting to do a certain video for so long, and then all of a sudden I find myself either clicking the live button or record button, depending on what the video is. And then I just like, I did it. It's like, oh, I did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it does come back to the whole point of all of this is that it might feel like we are losing, right? And that feeling of love goes down. But if we reverse that and see that what we're actually doing in this moment, yes, it might feel like a loss, but the leaves do shed themselves every once in a while, and the tree just stands there and continues to ground itself. This is what we get to do as well. Those leaves that are no longer keeping us warm anymore, that no longer serving us, we get to shed them and allow and see it from a place of love where we are loving ourselves because this is no longer serving us. And it's not the person themselves, there's nothing wrong with the person. It's just the experience itself is not serving us, right? Because it's never the person, it's always us. And I will continue to make this point as many times as I have to, and all the videos that I have to, until it finally clicks on the cellular level. Whereas I understand that, and that's why I don't take things personally. Mind you, there are moments when I still do, but this is where the ego takes things personally, and I take the time to like, okay, what is it saying about me? It's not the person, it's me. What am I hearing about myself that I'm not liking about myself? And then, okay, this is what it is. Now, what are my options?
Absolutely. And whenever we're making it about the other person, we're just not being in service.
Yeah.
That's something that really became a strong lesson for me in 2020. In any conversation that I'd be having, if I ever felt myself get impatient or get frustrated, I would stop. I would take the sacred pause, chill myself out, and like, if you're frustrated with this person because of their behaviors or their patterns, then I'm in my ego. I'm not being in service. If I truly, like I told you, I wanted to become the grand master of presence. Well, if I truly want to, on a cellular level, embody presence, then I don't get frustrated with other people who are maybe getting frustrated with me. I don't need to reflect that energy back. If we're in a conversation and things start getting to reaction mode instead of curiosity and openness, then it's my responsibility as the person with the clarity of being in service and the clarity to pinpoint presence as my core value in relationships. It's my responsibility to cool the ego and just be, and return to that being in service. If someone else needs to express whatever they need to express, then I'm here in service. There's no, if I'm being impatient, then I'm not aligning with my true purpose.
Yeah, I love that. And also tying in, if you woke up one morning, how can you be grandmaster of presence without the journey itself?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, that's quite often what we desire to create on the long run. It's skill wise. And we can't just wake up a whole new person, because then we would feel like we just switch bodies with somebody. We've seen these movies where we just switch bodies, like, and it completely feels like we're born in somebody else's body and we don't even know what to do with it. And that's the other side of creating this grand vision that we all have for our future selves, is that all of these are habits or skills, and in order for us to get there, we need to go through the journey itself that prepares us for that version of reality.
And that's what all of the movies and books, all science fiction shows us, is that every episode or every movie, there's always a training process, and there's always trials and tribulations along the journey. They don't just wake up and they're a Jedi. They have to go through a whole process and learn for years and years to become a Jedi.
Yeah. Just like Neo in the Matrix, he didn't just wake up. In the third or fourth movie, he didn't just wake up that way. There was other movies that led up to that point that got him there.
Yeah, remember who he was too at the beginning of the Matrix, and that's such a great point, and that's where we get to hold space in our heart that until people choose the journey, that they are still the Neo just trying to like go about this regular day.
Yeah, it's really comes down to letting go of the comforts and embracing the discomforts and understanding that those discomforts will eventually disappear. Once we embrace them all, there would be nothing left to feel uncomfortable about.
That's right.
So, and that's the end goal for all of us. Perfect time, 12:12.
I was gonna say on that note.
Yeah, on that note, this is a perfect way to wrap up at 12:12. This was a nice and interesting podcast that we did. And the energy was literally all over the place, but it comes down to intuition, living your truth, understanding yourself, and a little bit on the marketing and the journey itself.
And falling in love with the journey.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you for another great podcast.
Thank you. I love our Monday talks.
I know, me too. I love it. And I look forward to every Monday, even though my family's downstairs, my husband is home. So I'm like, you're going to take care of them. I'm going to be on my computer until like 2:30, 3 o'clock, because I have another call after. And I was on here since 9:30. I have, so my course, I have all the quests because it's not modules. So I have all the quests outlined and I have all the 7 topics already outlined and ready to go. So it's now, I know, right? And I thought, like, I'm never going to get there. And it happened within, like, in total, I spent maybe 3 hours.
Yeah.
And so now it's just scripts and incorporate and creating workbooks based on the flow.
Huge.
Yeah.
This is so exciting.
And that right there has been in the works for over 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know that, right?
Yep.
The people that are listening or watching, wherever it's going to be on, might not know that, but this has been in my head creating itself for over 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's still going to take time for me to actually create it and finish creating it, but that is the creative process. I tried pushing it, I tried forcing it, and it only made things worse. It only pushed me further away. So I stopped trying to force. It's like that quote that you like that I say. Love is like a fart. If you have to force it, it's probably shit. So I stopped forcing because it became to be a little too much and it started pushing me in the opposite direction. So I allowed myself to sit on that, to sit. And I said, it's going to happen naturally. And this is exactly what happened. I just found myself typing things up and putting it all together. I'm like, exactly what I've been saying, that it's going to happen naturally. So whatever it is, whoever's watching or listening, you're trying to create. And if it feels like you're forcing it too much and you find yourself walking in the opposite direction, pause, sit down and think about it, because the other possibility is that it might not be for you. Because I was trying to force one type of a course, and this one just, by giving myself time, I was able to uncover what it was that I actually was meant to create. So here I am creating it now. So yeah, it feels awesome, and yet it also feels scary and uncomfortable because it is the journey and it's still fairly new and fresh. But with each time, it becomes easier and easier and easier.
Oh, this is just so exciting. Like, as someone who has watched your journey, it's just so cool. So cool to see you now, like saying that you have the quests outlined, like you're doing it. You're doing it. You're
Yeah,
doing the
and
damn thing.
you seen the other side of me. It's like I want to say it's like night and day. Um, but if I woke up this way, I would not be able to navigate this person. Right? It's 1 minute at a time, 1 second at a time. It could start with a second, 2 seconds, and so on. But it's 1 second at a time that allows us to get to this point. And how many seconds has passed?
Mhm.
Right? Quite a few seconds. Um, so yeah. On that note,
Wait a second. Just a few.
oh, thank you. And honestly, I also would not be here if it wasn't for you, because you have been one of the biggest parts of my journey.
Likewise. The reason that I am able to show up now to Zooms and Facebook Lives is because of our relationship. Just deciding one day to hop on a Zoom and start talking.
Yeah.
That was my training. Our Zoom relationship, like this entire friendship, has blossomed on Zoom. And thanks to it, like I couldn't have known all along that that was my training for now showing up for the community in a bigger way.
Yeah. And me too. I just love connecting. I love the face to face connections. I didn't know where it was going to bring me, but intuitively I knew that there was something to it. And I didn't need to know the whole entire vision and the picture. I just knew it was going to bring me where it was meant to bring me. And there's a lot of things in our journey that are just intuitive actions or hits that we go and do. And then later on, we're like, oh, it makes sense why I just knew I had to, or I wanted to do it, or I wanted to try it and test it out. This is why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eventually, it all makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways,
Now on that note.
on that note, the third note, on that note, thank you. And I am looking forward to our next week. And maybe next week we get to talk about fly monkeys.
I mean, I loved today's topic. I feel like we could keep going on and on from this because other things that came up, like, well, I'll probably tell you on WhatsApp, but yeah,
I'd love to hear them.
yeah. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what we talk about next week. We never really know.
Exactly. It'll be a surprise.
To us even.
Exactly.
Uh,
Awesome.
so
Thank
much
you.
love.
Until next week.
See you next week.
Bye and bye.